These Peckerwoods gonna make it real expensive, Bobby.
This is an OG call. I'm keeping him.
OG. Fuck. We owe you one.
So I'm sitting at home with my 7-year-old. He likes to watch cartoons and stuff. So he has Disney Plus, and we go to the Spider-Verse, and we're looking for Miles Morales. So as we go to the Spider-Verse, and we go to the Spider-Verse's category, and we look up all the available Spider-Man options, I noticed that there is no Spider-Man multiverse in Disney Plus. So now I'm like, wait a minute, doesn't Disney own Marvel? So how come there is no multiverse in Disney Plus? And how come Sony has all these rights? Like, is there some kind of deal or something that's going on? Like, who actually owns Marvel? So when I come across some news, the first thing I do is immediately investigate it, because that's what I do. I investigate stuff. I don't just I just want to know for personal information. So it turns out in 1998 that Sony purchased the film rights to Spider-Man for reportedly $7 million. And then in 2009, Disney bought out Marvel for reportedly $4 billion. And this gives Disney the right to own all merchandise and toys, while Sony still handles the Spider-Man film projects. But they have a complex agreement where Sony has to produce a certain amount of Spider-Man films in a certain amount of years or something like that. Mind you, PlayStation introduced itself to the world in 1994. Around the time Nintendo and Sega was beefing real heavy. I think PlayStation came out in 94. So the 64 came out in 96 as a response to PlayStation. And Sega came out with the Sega Saturn to try to stay into the competition. And part of the reason that Sony decided to get into the gaming market was because they were always watching the gaming industry. And when the PlayStation came out, all three of them was doing that thing, but there's always two that's neck and neck, and there's always going to be that one in the race just to make second place look good. So because Nintendo and Sega stepped their game up, this where Sony was sitting back, knowing that they had some time to make that next move with the PlayStation 2. They noticed that Nintendo were more geared towards children. So PlayStation wanted to change the game by appealing to adults. And I don't really think that they were worried about Sega once PlayStation stepped onto the scene. So keep in mind that Sony has been in the entertainment business the whole entire time, that Sega and Nintendo was going back and forth with each other. So this is what it means when you hear people say competition is needed, because if it wasn't for Nintendo marketing towards children, then Sony wouldn't have had that, wouldn't have saw that window of opportunity to focus their product more towards adults. So while Sony solidifying their position in the game market with the Tony Montana approach, meanwhile, Microsoft somewhere else doing something completely different, writing programs for IBM, and like they mastered the art of program writing for PCs. And at some point they decided to try their hand in the entertainment business, which it had a nice little run, but it eventually came to an end with MSNBC, which is partnered with the regular NBC network. They've been doing this since 1985, designing software for microcomputers, hence the name Microsoft. Although they are the world's leading software and hardware developer and manufacturer, that doesn't equate to I should try my hand at the gaming industry or the entertainment sector, which they do have some experience, but as I mentioned earlier, that came to an end. Plus, we don't know how much hands-on involvement Microsoft had with these other business ventures. So now, since I'm a software, hardware powerhouse, that ain't enough. I'm gonna just go ahead and buy my way into the gaming industry, which the recent CMA and FTC report clearly states that money can't buy you everything. But we'll get more into that a little bit later. But here we are, 2000s. Microsoft decides to introduce Xbox at the same time Sony plans to launch its PlayStation 2. Mario was already loved around the world and Sonic was trying to keep up. So Sega released this Dreamcast in 2001. And in that year, Nintendo released GameCube. Well, actually, Sega released Dreamcast in 98 and they discontinued the Dreamcast in 2001. And that would be the last that you hear from Sega before Sega decided to completely take themselves out of the competition. The bad thing about coming into an industry that you really don't know anything about, and it shows that you don't really have a hands-on at anything after you buy it, is that the big boys in the game already knows everybody. Sony is notorious for cutting deals. How you think they got this complex agreement with Disney? So now you have Tony Montana, Mario, and Revenge of the Nerds in competition with each other. Tony Montana and Mario, they specifically design machines for video games. On the other hand, the nerds, they released that Xbox made out of Windows and PC parts, the perfect setup for cloud gaming. So it's clear that Microsoft came in on some other shit, but the world started giving them a chance, which would lead to a new fan base of a different breed. But it's not uncommon for development studios or major companies and corporations to peek over at their competition to see what they're doing and how they could improve what they're doing. Like they feed off each other. Nintendo might peek over at Sony, see what they got going on, what kind of new innovations they got going on. Sony might be peeking at Nintendo and Xbox to see what they got going on. So we can see if it's revolutionary, the next step in gaming. Is it interesting and can we make a better version of it? That's what they do. But I don't think Microsoft does that. They buy all these studios, leave them to their own devices, and whenever they're ready to publish it to the public, it's going straight to Game Pass. So they building up an infrastructure for Game Pass. So Mario done locked down a certain targeted audience, which is family and friendly. So that means don't come over here fucking with me. Let me do me. While the Xbox showing some promise, it almost seems like it caught PlayStation off guard because the PlayStation 3 wasn't doing so well. And Microsoft said themselves that they was coming in to try to take Sony out. And they had a chance to they had a good chance to compete with them. They were very promising at the beginning, all the way up until the Xbox 360. That sent PlayStation back to the drawing board to come up with some new plans for the PlayStation 4. So Xbox was killing it at that one point in time. This is when the Xbox fans transformed into something else, something I don't think a few therapy sessions will fix. Sony went on and took the L that time, and then they came back and made a public announcements about how they lost focus, what they've learned, and what they're going to do to get back on their feet. But then something strange happened. Xbox consoles started having all sorts of issues. This was the beginning of where we are today. Remember earlier I said that Microsoft was in the entertainment business and had a nice little run, but it came to an end. I'm starting to see this cycle come full circle with the nerds. Recently, Xbox still in the game, PlayStation going strong. This is right before next gen. Microsoft won Flash's money with the intent to purchase Activision Blizzard's. Xbox fans lost their minds, ain't give a shit about PlayStation.
Nigga, you gay.
And they was talking cash money shit too. The deal didn't even go through. All they heard was Activision Blizzard could be coming to Game Pass, and they ran with that. Xbox fans were so confident in that deal, like the nerds are with Game Pass being successful. So now Mario chilling. He been standing strong since he first introduced himself in 84, 83, 84, somewhere around that time. While Sony, Google, Nvidia, and Stadia, I think, was in front of the CMA and the FTCs, the only thing everybody wanted to point out was Sony and how Sony crying and how Sony trying to stop this deal. There was other people involved in this. All you kept hearing was Sony trying to stop this deal. Sony the one trying to block this deal. Sony keep crying about it and, stop whining, Sony. All they worried about is Activision. Call of Duty is the only thing keeping them alive. Well, here's a little fun fact. Sony did take Call of Duty into consideration while they was designing their hardware. And it shows in the haptic feedback within the DualSense controller, if you play with that on, which complements the 3D Pulse headsets, in which I have a pair of those too. Which brings me to the next gen console wars. Microsoft and Sony released their consoles around the same time, but I think Sony had it planned out to where they will only release a certain amount of PlayStations at the time, even though it was a pandemic. But you gotta realize this thing is a lot bigger than us. It seemed to be all part of a design to kind of set Microsoft up and also to prove a point that they put out a limited amount of PlayStations and just let Xbox run and do its thing. And I think that Sony already knew that they had this in a lot. Then the reports start coming in. Xbox outselling PlayStation. Of course, they're going to be outselling PlayStation if PlayStation only has a limited amount. I don't know how many places I went to looking for the PS5. They was all out of stock. And at these same places that I was going to looking for PlayStations, they did have a bunch of Xbox, even when they would make these small announcements that this is when they're putting out PS5s and it's very limited. So hurry up and be the first in line to get you a console. While I'm having a hard time finding PlayStations, Xbox consoles are just sitting in GameStop, Walmart, Target. Nobody really wanted to purchase them regardless of what kind of deals Xbox were giving out. Basically, Xbox was in a competition by itself, not even acknowledging the Xbox One anymore, while PlayStation is phasing out its PlayStation 4 even to this day by enhancing game quality and visuals on PlayStation 4 to play on PlayStation 5. Then Microsoft starts sabotaging itself with nobody really to run up against at that time, because PlayStation on hold, we started having a slew of issues that plague Xbox once again. Game issues, console issues, exclusive issues, all kinds of madness. And developers are leaving once they got into Microsoft. And from a few interviews that I read, it seemed like they were happy to leave because they went on to start being more of who they are, like going back to find their identity without being under Microsoft Xbox umbrella. So it's pretty clear to me that Xbox only wants to sell games, not actually create them. So while the nerd is trying to build that cloud infrastructure with no intentions of actually being game developers or fully into the game market Tony Montana at the table with other boss families like Google and Nvidia. They looking at Microsoft, like, especially Sony, like, this is next gen, this must be a joke. We're locking down the consoles, that's without a doubt. And Google and Nvidia is more so like, well, we got our own version of the cloud, so we might as well shut this shit down now across the board. And then the nerds respond like, we have a 10-year deal that'll be suitable for everybody, just to try to hurry up and push this along. Knowing that nobody can really fuck with Mario, Nintendo like, yeah, I guess it's whatever, I'll take it. Which later on, the CMA and FTC would hit Microsoft with a 10-year deal that they can't refuse. They cannot try to purchase Activision after they said no to the deal for 10 years. This would send Xbox fans' mental health into a downward spiral. Once the news broke that the deal didn't go through, this set the gaming community on fire. At first it was Halo, then that Tokyo game, then Hi-Fi Rush, then the Activision deal don't go through. Now we dealing with this Redfall situation. I'm pretty sure Starfield is in full panic mode right now. And they trying to get their games to run on Microsoft's version of next gen. Microsoft just can't get right in 2023. Now I could be wrong, but maybe it could have something to do with them being PC and hardware programmers. Even after being in the game for a little over 20 years, you still didn't learn anything about gaming or entertainment, even though that you had almost another 10, 11-year run with MSNBC. That's a little over 30 years in the game. God damn, Xbox and Microsoft. Although all the signs are clear, even with evidence of other studios now wanting to work with Microsoft or Xbox, and the CEO acknowledging that their games are shit, the Xbox fan base their mentality reminds me of, you know how you got this homeboy or maybe it's somebody you know, an associate or somebody you might not even really, you just know them. And they got this girl that you know, and a lot of other people in the community know that she's not wifey material. Proceed to give him all the examples of everybody that you know that knows this girl, and even people that he know that knows this girl, and he stays in denial. He's more so like, no, that ain't her, she ain't that type. He could even see this chick out with another dude and still convince himself that that's not her, even though her OnlyFans page and TikTok says otherwise. And while they don't have any pictures of them together on any of her social media platforms, then he'll respond, why is everybody hating on us? It's because Microsoft doesn't belong in the gaming entertainment industry. They're buying up a state to add to the portfolio of all the other things that they own. That's why they're trillionaires. Microsoft don't care about gamers, they care about the gaming business and how to control the business for themselves. If I own it, I can do whatever I want with it. I don't even have to, as long as some third-party games on there, I'm fine with that. Other than that, everything else can go into storage. But if you do want it, you have to come through me. Just look at the state of Redfall. Everybody knows what's going on with that game. And I'm damn sure that the developers didn't want to put that out like that. That's probably why so many developers are leaving. Like, we can't shine here. Look at what they doing to our games. It's not even working on next gen. You know what I mean? Like, it looked like the game was developed by some interns who just landed their first internship. Now, by me having a BF in animation, which included some real-time animation courses, which is game development, and at times during presentations, we would see everybody's work, and sometimes work is just hard to follow behind. So I feel sorry for Starfield, because if y'all expecting Starfield to save Xbox, the damage has already been done. So as we wrap this video up, we will, as a PlayStation user and always have been, I think the PlayStation community will extend an arm to Xbox players who wants to humbly come over after being defeated. We'll welcome you and embrace you as you transition to next gen. So after 20 minutes of talking, what did we learn from this? That Spider-Man is never coming to Xbox or Game Pass. And remember, if more than one person knows your girl, it's time to reevaluate your situation. Like, subscribe, notifications. Peace, and I'm out. Oh, and one last thing. Microsoft still has a chance. It's not over yet until the fat lady sings. They still have a few acquisitions to attend.